Tonight's special guest, David James Rodriguez. I was going to say he's David Rodriguez of the David James variety because there are so many people in the world with the same name, David Rodriguez, that he has to differentiate himself. So he's got a new project uh, focused on not the adults probably watching this show, but many people here have children. And Dave, welcome back to Grand Theft World. How you doing, bro?
Awesome, Rich. How are you? And looks like Scott's here too. What's up, gentlemen?
Oh man.
All right, so we're having a meeting of the minds. So it's been a while since you and I caught up, Dave. Most remarkable that I thought of things that I thought about you in the past couple years was back in COVID, bro. Like several of our guests in the past couple weeks, you were someone who was early on and you were out there doing activism at a time when most people were cowering at home. Do you remember those days, or is it too far gone?
They're imprinted in my mind forever, bro. And I can't believe we went through it. And even now, it seems like a chapter of a long time ago. I changed locations because the DA came after me, the chief of police, all these people, and I'm like I'm just doing, civil disobedience on the beach. We were doing a maskless shopping. We did a cash drop in one situation where they wouldn't let us into the store at Trader Joe's, and we just walked in, wrote our hand receipt, dropped the $5 bill, and walked out with a $3 item, and that thing went viral. And so when I think about that, I'm like, man, what really happened? So it's an incredible time to be alive, but we got to stand up. I love your hat. I was looking at your hat during the break there. I will not comply. That really is the energy for humanity moving forward. And we got to, find solutions to this, tyranny. But yeah, man, it's imprinted forever. And so I'm actually in talks with the documentary filmmaker to take some of this raw footage and document what we did, because it's incredible that we did 70 bonfires on the beach in a row, like 70 weeks in a row. We did 40 weeks of free hugs, 20 weeks of self-care Sunday, because everything was shut down in Santa Cruz, California, man. This is like the ground floor of Agenda 2030. And I didn't know that. We were just, hanging out with our freedom of choice vaccine buddies, and everything got locked down. So yeah, it's incredible, man. I don't know how it was over in your neck of the woods, but it's just bananas.
Yeah, it was very
And
tyrannical
there's like
over.
no
Oh, sorry.
accountability.
Yeah, it was very tyrannical over here in Connecticut. And this hat, interesting that you would notice it because I got this during COVID. And I heard some things that Ted Nugent was saying during COVID that made a lot of sense. And I said, I'd like to send him some money. So I went to his website, I sent him some money, and he sent me an autographed hat. And sadly, whatever marker they use to sign the brim doesn't last in the Florida sun because I go to Florida a couple times a year and the sun just blazes it out. So you can't tell it's autographed anymore, but it's a Uncle Ted Nugent hat from back in the COVID days. All right. So that type of activism that you demonstrated during COVID, did you have any family history growing up? Did you see anyone else in your family ever take some act? Like, I'm trying to find the seed for to show the audience, like, where did that type of activity come from? You didn't do it in 2012 or 2015. Like by 2020, though, you would realize you're like, I'm going to stand my ground and I'm going to do something that lets other people know that they're safer than they think because they're scared. Like everyone's scared shitless to the point that they would probably use in some situations deadly force to restrain you for not doing the thing.
That's right. Yeah. I think it came from because I started attending an Acapulco in 2015 after Ron Paul had his election stolen, in my view, and just seeing how the whole political system is absolute baloney. So once I saw Berwick put that event out there, and I went 2015, 16, 17, and then after I was getting excited, it doubled from like 120 people to like 360 to like 600, and I think 2018 was like 1500 or 1400, something like that. Anyways, you have to wait a year to go see your freedom friends. And so I came
Yeah.
back in 2018, 2019. I started a Facebook group called Santa Cruz Voluntarius so we could get together locally. And that worked out great because the next year, the whole scamdemic hit. So we basically saw what was coming, and we hold a meeting, and we said the forced jab is coming, guys. So what are we going to do? So there was about 15, maybe 20 people there, and a few voluntarists. Howard Lickman was there. Some other, freedom of choice friends would still
Are
believe in
we allowed to
authority.
say his name now? For
No,
years, we had
he's
to
good.
call him by
ATN
his
De La
pen name.
Fuente. That's right. His pen
No,
name.
yeah. I do it
Yeah,
every time I interview him. I end up calling him Howard because I'm like, bro,
exactly.
I can't call people by like the pen name. I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
agree. It's a weird name in the first place, a French name, but a great, origin story of that guy. So we just got together and said, "Hey, dude, it's no joke, man. They're about to do a forced jab on everybody." And so we started doing. I think we started off with um, civil disobedience on the beach because they were closing down the beaches. This is during May 2020, from like 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. The beach is closed in Santa Cruz, a beach town. It's 80 degrees. And so I took that personal, dude. I love to swim in the water on a hot day. And these guys are going to ruin. So we started getting the bullhorn out and say, we declare the beach open. And we walked on the beach. And then the little stormtroopers with their golf carts would drive along. Hey, you guys can't be out here. And we would live stream and say, hey, is this your beach? No, who does the beach belong to? The people. Excellent. That's us. And we kept doing that. And it just kind of evolved. So I think it was understanding that there's nobody coming to save me. This was a big one because there was a lot of programming, as you know, from the school system that, somebody's going to come do it. Hey, who's going to come do it? And then the Michael Jackson song, The Man in the Mirror, I realized I'm the one. You guys are the one listening, as you know. So that was very uplifting to me. And then to be with Howard and a few other people who know what time it is, that's like, because then you're not alone. If you're isolated, you're like, dude, am I crazy for real? Like self ownership, voluntary relationships, personal responsibility. Am I an extremist? And so everything's kind of backwards with statism. And anyways, that's how it turned out. And then these other things started to develop, like the free hugs. I mean, people are uninterested in the facts, and that's what I see. Some of the clips, previously in the show, seeing Rubio and Lindsey Graham, you know, they're just tyrants, dude. Like I have no energy given into them at all because I know what time it is, and they're gonna try to do some crazy stuff. And if we have a community locally and people that you can trust and people that believe in morality and voluntary interactions, we're gonna be okay. Even if you don't got $1 million, it's gonna be okay. But if you're by yourself and you're outnumbered and you don't know who your neighbors are, there's more strategy involved that I'm starting to learn about. And yeah, there's no history of like civil disobedience. Although on the Mexican side of my family, the Rodriguez side, my grandfather was a fruit picker labor contractor in the Central Valley of California. So he was out there hiring Mexicans, probably illegal Mexicans. And when Cesar Chavez
well, if you
came
go back
out,
far enough, they used to hire illegal Americans.
that's right. That's right. It's like illegal according to what? These imaginary lines? Like, this is the whole conversation that I think is going to be happening here in these coming years because that's the conversation that I want to start. And I started doing some comedy the last few years, producing some comedy shows every month and performing because, as Rob Hustle told me 10 years ago, now a little bit more, at Anarchapulco, he said, if you want to change culture, it's about music, comedy, and film. And of course, there's other ways, literature, and there's other ways to do it. But that was what he told me. So that kind of was a seed that he planted. And it's like Lysander Spooner proved government's illegitimate 150 years ago. Murray Rothbard laid out a voluntary world 50 years ago. and, and so we have the ideas, we have the morality, the truth, the goodness, the win-win relationships. We got it, but we can't get it out to the world. And so that's why I appreciate you and Scott and other producers out there, dude. The vault, which I just learned about what you're talking about, they try to change the history. As you know, being a forensic historian, one of the badasses on the earth doing this stuff, they try to change the history. And then the kids are like, oh yeah, we never were free. Like we always had to get permission to collect the rainwater off our roof or something, or we got to meter our own well so they can come monitor us on a well. So, anyways, I just understand that we are on the winning team. We just got to get this information out there to the world. And so that's why I started using comedy as a medium, because now I can go to a room of 30, 50, 60 people and total strangers and do some jokes for 15 or 20 minutes and plant some seeds that hopefully will germinate later on as the culture and other areas evolve. But yelling at the politicians is not the solution for me. Um, I was just writing something down because I saw like Trump, getting preyed on and stuff. And I used to be a pretty devout Christian, until I saw what they actually believe, And Jesus is my homeboy. I love Jesus, but organized religion is a under the state often. The state is their actual God, and the state told these churches to shut down, during the pandemic. And I'm like, you guys are shutting down. I thought you guys believe in God. You know what I mean? Like, so I thought, you're supposed to face the lion in the lion's den, and be fully courageous and put your life on the line. That's what I thought. So just seeing how they behaved kind
Well,
of
your name is Daniel, so I can see why you would think that.
right, right.
I read the
We,
story, I think that's somebody else, but you read that story, you're like, that's my name.
well, this is I don't know if you meant to, omit that, but yeah, David and Goliath, dude. We face
Well, I
the
was talking
giant.
Daniel. Isn't there one Daniel in the lion's den?
Yes, correct. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah, and then there's
Daniel's in the
David and
lion.
Goliath,
That's
right?
right.
So I mixed the two up, but I
Yep.
was also thinking of Aesop's fable that I talked about with Ken McCarthy last week of the mouse and the lion. I've been working a
Yeah.
lot this week, so you'll excuse me,
Well,
Dave.
yeah, no, dude, absolutely. The word from Daniel was something to the effect of, you're not allowed to pray to any gods or any man. I'm the king. You have to pray to me. And so Daniel said, nope, I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to open my window when I pray to God. And if you throw me in the lion's den, then, my God will save me. And even if he doesn't, I'll still believe in him. So, flipping the bird to the king is always, I think, a great thing to do to exercise freedom. And this is what I've felt like when I read Rothbard, when I read Spooner. I'm like, dang, dude, like these guys knew what's going on. How come this information isn't out there? And I think it's just a matter of getting it out there. So, using some comedy is a way, and hopefully by the end of the year, I can do maybe 40 minutes. It takes a long time to write and hone it on stage. It's no joke, but I'm having a good time, and that's what I
Well,
think.
you get some jokes in an area. I'm going to talk about something I have no experience in. You get a joke in a couple jokes in an area, and then you have areas that might overlap, and then you can string those into a longer set. That's how I could see that being done without having done it. So I'm sure if you do it, you can figure out a better way. So at least now you got like a rough draft and a better first draft, or you can move on. But music, comedy, and film. Let's talk about those for a second because I have been studying storytelling lately because it's the essence of music, comedy, and film, which are the things we need to master in order to communicate with the audience, right? So, in doing that, I was looking at the marketplace, and Casey Neistat is a famous vlogger
Yep.
because he could tell a story every
Mhm.
day, right? And so it's like, where did Casey learn that? Well, he learned it from his older brother Van, who's like a half brother, right? So then I was asking the question. This is what I always do. How did Van learn that? Van learned it from a very famous artist in the area and such things called Tom Sachs. And then I studied Tom Sachs for about a week, and I learned the word knolling. I
Mhm.
learned bricolage. I mean, it's fascinating. He's a fascinating artist. But I also learned that everything you see that's cool about Casey came from Tom Sachs. Most things that you see from Van also came because they both worked for Tom Sachs, right? So an artist teaches excellence, and then those people go out and bring excellence into the market, and people wonder, like, where did that excellence come from? And you come back to like, somebody with interesting philosophy juxtaposed to art skills. So Van Neistat, very thick in the philosophy of life and storytelling, right? So the pithy answer is a story has to contain a surprise. Otherwise, it's a report. And he used an example of Bert Kreischer telling a story and his wife telling a story. The crescendo of Kreischer's story is this woman who came up to him and said all these amazing things in a hospital was Whitney Houston. So after you've heard the story, like you're wondering, and there's mystery and suspense, and these are all parts of storytelling. Whereas Kreischer's wife would say, "We saw Whitney Houston at the hospital," and then she'd proceed to give you the details that you don't care about because it's not in story form.
Yep.
So for comedy, story is essential. Many music pieces are focused around telling a story, right? I was learning a new song a couple weeks ago. I usually am like 10, 15, 20 years behind in whatever Pearl Jam puts out. So I heard some of their recent music and I was like, whoa, that's kind of hard to listen to. But then I was like, I wonder if I could sing it. So anyway, you got to learn the lyrics in order to do it. So he has this one song, "Quick Escape," where it's about like getting away from Trump world during COVID.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't even know if I want to sing this song. So anyway, these layers of storytelling are immortalized in music and comedy and film. I mean, film, in order to be watchable, unless it's Pulp Fiction, has to have a storyline, right? So were you ever like hip to that? Because I know you focus on a lot of nonfiction work. Have you had to do any work to bring these three facets into your life regarding storytelling? Because it's kind of like the glue that holds those things together in our culture.
Absolutely, man. As a side note, I produced a film at the end of last year, and it's a 30-minute fictional story film, and I'll tell you about it. But since you brought up the book, um, I'm I'm not even a quarter through. This is Robert McKee's story. Um,
Oh, right on.
about screenwriting, right? Because even Gatto,
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I still got to make a story about Gatto's book, The Underground History, in fictional format. Um, so, anyways, this director who wrote and directed this film, he helped me understand the power of fiction, right? He's like, if you look at these movies, he asked me my favorite movies. I'm like Braveheart, Rocky. He said they're all fictional. It's like, yeah. So he says the narrative fictional is what shifts and really holds culture throughout time. And like Star Wars was his big thing. Star Wars was before me a little bit, so I didn't really get into that. But he like went through how was Joseph Campbell's.
Hero's Journey.
Oh, might be a connection
Oh,
issue. I
you
was
I
gonna
there?
was
say
waiting to see if, yeah, I was waiting
that
to see if it was
Robert.
just my connection or if it was his. Dave, we lost the last 10 seconds. Will you just roll back?
So let me say about the Star Wars that Joseph Campbell was a huge inspiration for um,
George
George
Lucas.
Lucas. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a great series with Bill
Bill
Moyers.
Moyers. Yeah.
Yep, I was like I watched that. I said, oh my, and that really helped me kind of let go of the organized religion thing too. Because if people don't know, Joseph Campbell was saying why myth is important. He says because the great mystery is you sitting where you are. Like how do we get here? Like that question has not been resolved. So there's a bunch of myths around that, a bunch of stories about that, and that shifts culture and values and traditions. And I'm like, dang, dude, like that's really important. So,
I too
anyways,
was
just
struck by the Bill Moyers, Joseph Campbell interview. And afterwards, I found out because I did research who is Bill Moyers, this
yeah.
nice old man who interviews Joseph Campbell. He must have done some other cool things, right? He was LBJ's press secretary, I'm pretty sure, during USS Liberty. So it's like, I'm not going to hold him responsible for that. I could still listen about Joseph Campbell, but I also have that filed to the side, Mr. Moyers. Skullduggery is not left behind. But yeah, the the notion of the hero's journey. The fascinating thing about George Lucas is he was a race car driver. And had he not had a near fatal crash, he probably wouldn't have been reading Joseph Campbell in the first place. But I was always kind of struck by, and he watched a lot of Kurosawa samurai movies. He had a whole bunch of esoteric World War II things that you could see Star Wars is built off the battle scenes, the
Hmm.
fighting scenes, right? But still, it's very thick with philosophy. And that is very, very, very hard to do in 90 pages, developing characters in only a few lines each.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it's a movie that definitely movie series up to the seventh one that stands the test of time. I'm not
Yeah.
responsible for Jar Jar Binks. That's not in my generation. That happened like when I was like off doing other things. But I
Were
was
you a big
four when
Star
Star
Wars
Wars
guy?
came out. Dude, I have bins of the original my toys that I gave my brother and my nephew played with, my sons played with, and that was a good creative time back then. And I think
Yeah.
they were good archetypes to emulate.
Yep.
I grew up in like the middle of nowhere, and I identify with Luke Skywalker. I'm like, I want to get out of this town and move off and fight the Empire, and it doesn't turn out how you think it did. So
Yeah, man. So stories are where it's at. This story that he wrote and I produced, it's about a farmer. It's called Outlaw Farmer. It's about a farmer who rejects the digital ID and he kicks some ass. And that's all I can tell you. I was telling Scott I was trying to get it released before this interview, but hopefully in the next month or so. We're going to release it for free, but just working out some of the finer details with post production and marketing, these kind of things. But I was like, this is awesome. So that's why I said, oh, maybe this is the kind of the on ramp to start learning this stuff, screenplay, and then start committing to that because Rocky, I just watched that the other day. That's from 1976, man. And Braveheart from 1995. Like that's like still inspires my soul. So I
Well,
can't
that's
be the
that's
only one.
different. There's a difference though. Mel Gibson had 20 years Hollywood experience by the time, 15 years Hollywood experience by the time he makes like the Braveheart, right? Which is based on William Wallace, and there is a 9/11, a September 11th in that history that's very interesting. But I
Mm,
digress because when you go to Sylvester Stallone,
yeah,
he's not a guy who's supposed to write a screenplay.
yeah.
And that's the 70s. And shortly before he wrote that screenplay, he was, you want to hear? Ross Ulbricht's mom, Lynn, went to a boarding school in Switzerland, and he was the gym teacher there. And his name's Michael. His name's
Wow.
Michael Stallone. And anyway, so there's long history to Sly Stallone too. Um, so the music, comedy, and film angle moving into communicating these bigger ideas. Because like for my entire media production career, it's always like there's this thing going on. People are anesthetized and don't want to hear about it.
Mm,
And if you bring the right details and reason and logic, you can get 3% of those people to realize it. But
mm,
the rest are locked in with like emotional locks and keys and psychological propaganda and stuff you can't cut through unless you can compel them through story, which doesn't say this is happening to you. It's saying this is happening to these characters. And then they can learn, oh, that's going on here too. Right. So there's many such cases throughout history, but I think that given the democratization of technology right now, it is easier for people like yourself to take those ideas and whatever you don't know, those knowledge gaps, you can smash those shut right now with various pieces of tech and or human communications, right? Jordan Page is making, like, he made a trailer first and it was AI and it was, it was early AI. But as he's continued to refine that storyline, like he's making a 3 hour film and I don't even think he's using a camera. I think he's just using prompt, right? So the power of you being able to visualize a script, write the prompts for whatever you need as B-roll, maybe, going to locations and filming those things, putting it together, and you could do fiction or nonfiction. But once you learn how to do that process, it's doable in either format.
yeah.
And
That's
then if you make
powerful,
some
man.
contacts, yeah, if you make some contacts that have distribution, and you learn what those rules are, right? There are people that have a contact with Amazon or Netflix or Hulu or whatever, but they only buy standard packages. They don't buy from individuals. So now you got to go find who they buy packages from and say, I would like to make something. What are your specs and what can I work out as an agreement?
Mm.
Because, otherwise it's like, hello, Jeff Bezos, I'd like to do business with Amazon. Like, just find the people who already do that, maybe, but also caveat emptor.
Yeah,
Because that
absolutely.
market is not a forgiving or heart-filled place. It's a bunch of ruthless
Well,
activity.
that's what we're seeing right now. Hollywood falling apart because of the control and the blackmail and the immorality. There's a bunch of evil people in there who are being exposed, and so I think a lot of people are getting out of Hollywood for that reason. And that's where we filmed this, just about I don't know 2 hours north of Sacramento in the boonies, where as long as you got someone who has some camera skills, and you mentioned AI too, we have a little bit of AI in there, and I've seen some of his other films. They got a little bit of AI, but having the human like who's one of the futurists? Gerd Leonard. Leonard is a futurist I follow. He says, as the technology increases, people want to have the human touch. And so they want to see a real guy. So when you and Scott are showing your face and being human, they're like, thank God it's not some robot AI out here because now the value of human life is increasing, in my opinion. And local gatherings and getting people together is more important. But even telling human stories, I'm glad you brought up the Stallone story because he was a bad actor, but he wrote it. They offered him 100K, 200K, 300K to sell, the screenplay, and he's like, no, he's like, if you want this screenplay, I'm gonna be Rocky Balboa. So he really leveraged himself in that. And there was one other part of it I forgot, but for some reason, because he didn't fund it, the producers I think got character control over Rocky Balboa, something like that. So there's some nuances in the contracts, and I learned some stuff here in the
Nobody knew
contracts.
to
But
merchandise to get the
yeah,
merchandise rights until Star Wars.
that's right. That's right. Yep, and that's
And
how
yeah,
Lucas made his billions. It was through merchandise.
it was so much more than the movie tickets, bro.
That's right.
I mean, like as a kid, I knew as the characters were rolling out and there were like proofs of purchase. And if you collect enough, you can send and get the special stuff. I was all about that as a kid. I had the Star Wars newsletter, Bantha Tracks. Did you know in 1983, I was in third grade, it was called Revenge of the Jedi. And it was Revenge of the Jedi on the posters and all the marketing up until right before they brought it out. And then they had to call it Return of the Jedi. They thought it was too over. So anyway, there was a lot of changes back then. They brought out the PG-13 because
Hmm.
it was Red Dawn and Temple of Doom, and they're like, "Well, these movies are like too much for PG, bro." And Temple of Doom is a heavy duty movie, and there's a lot of history that's true in that movie about the British and India and Kalima Shakti Day. Anyway, uh,
Well, this is just how basically like somebody can make a film and maybe a few thousand people see it, maybe 10,000, or maybe for like 100,000. But these films they're putting out, you get hundreds of millions, billions of people watch Star Wars, and now they defecate on the whole brand. Now that George Lucas sold his stuff, and now they can make it woke, and everybody's all pissed off about it because they know the power of story to shift culture, to shift them into a totalitarian state where people don't have rights and they just bow down to the scepter, whatever. They use story and tradition. I said, so these guys are playing the long game, man. That is interesting. We're like, I'm playing this short game. I got to play a long game and hopefully, plant some seeds that will germinate and be fruitful long after my life is out of here. And I know you definitely will. But it's like getting these stories out there that are empowering and uplifting. And this is just kind of a, scratch of the surface, but it's beautiful. And I think, yeah, stories is super important for comedy and for music and for film and for just daily living, like someone's
just
reporting
for
on something.
communication.
Yes.
You have an idea. If you go to a bank and you're just like duh 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 duh, or if you tell them a story, there's a vacant lot. Kids are getting hurt there. I have a plan to renovate it and it pays for itself. That's a bad, like, especially when that includes the surprise that they didn't think
Mm,
there's this thing inside, right? And when to introduce that. I remember studying Hitchcock and he did this famous interview with Francois Truffaut, who's in Close Encounters of Spielberg's, right? He's the guy who's in Mexico when the first thing opens up at the beginning of the movie. Anyway, he's a filmmaker too. He's from France, so I won't talk about that. But anyway, he interviews Hitchcock for a long time, and they made a book. So the book has the pictures of the interview and like the transcripts, but they also have some film footage of it. And the analytical aspects of how to create mystery and suspense, I noticed, are identical to how the government works.
hmm.
You have to leave out important parts and like it's like you're giving a message but you have to cut out this part and this part and this part. Now there's suspense. That's what they do with redactions. It is the origin of why people seek to fill it with conspiracy theory because they don't know the actual fact. It's been hidden. So by the government hiding information, they automatically trigger people to fill it and like wonder what goes there, right? Mystery and suspense. So as we learn to master the things they have mastered against us, I think that at least it brings it to a null set, which is a more equal playing ground,
Yep.
and from there we can make progress much easier than fighting uphill.
Yeah, 100%. This director, Rene Perez, he was telling me because he's like all in on movies. He's made like 40 of them. They're B movies, but they're exciting. There's some story in them. Anyways, he's like the news, they lay it out like a story, but the pundit is like your friend or something. So it's like this trusted figure, and it's like a soap opera, and
Well,
Trump's
that's
doing this.
Fahrenheit 451. Like they had the telescreens and they were your friend. And Montag's wife was more like into the telescreen than she was even into her own husband, and she considered them more real people than the people around her. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yep. And so I was like, wow. So he just kind of helped me understand the power of story and that this is really, if you want to shake the planet, if you make a good movie, then you can shake the planet once. So if you have a series or you have a kind of a vision of where you want to take it, it might take, like The Greatest Showman. I think that took 10 years to make with Hugh. that guy. Anyways, but it takes time. You know, you write it, you get the music, you got to get the producers, and that's like, okay, so that's where it comes in. You can have the story, you can have the actors, you need the funding, and this is where it comes down to. It's like, man, we tried to do a crowdfunding, I guess it was 2 years ago, 350K. No, we didn't even come close. So it's like, okay, now we got to bootstrap it, you know? And I was like, man, I'm not going to try to do that. Like, go to some investors, and we did. We tried to pitch it to them, but they didn't understand the value of narrative fictional storytelling. So like you get it. So that's why I'm enjoying this conversation because you're like, man, that's powerful. But these other guys are like, no, they want to have uh a mainstream movie. And we're like, dude, we're not trying to follow the people, man. We're trying to be out front and plant some seeds. And for me, I think the solution is exit and build and independent food, water, energy, you know, and do these things that humanity, like, they're going to go down, but let's build and let's empower decentralized communities in all these places, not with a documentary or not with a necessarily talking head, but with a story and a character, something they can relate to. And yeah, if there's some merch sales, that'd be great, or some character, something for the boys to have a hero, like the young boys. They want to be Rocky Balboa. That's what I wanted to be, and Braveheart, to have a hero to aspire to. Whereas now they have movies about the villains, like the Joker movie. Now they're showing how good evil is. They're using evil as a way to inspire the guys, the young boys, and they don't say, you know, stop evil at all costs. They're like, oh, he's off his meds. Oh, he needs some more meds. So they're using the story to get onto the subconscious mind of the person. Have some compassion. It's like, no, righteous men got to stop evil no matter what it is, and that's what's rising in my heart. And I think a lot of people, you know, you and your audience is like, okay, how do we stop it? Even like calling for justice for the Epstein files. I'm like, you think we're going to get justice, man? Look at 9/11, look at the Tuskegee experiment, look at JFK. Like, there is no justice, dude. It's up to us. So that might be an interesting conversation to hear your insights on that. But it's like, we got to build, man, you know, and story is powerful, and inspiring the young generation that there is hope, that there is a future, and that you're the chosen one. I think, like you said, with Luke Skywalker, you're like, yeah, that's me, man. I want to get out of here.
In their case, it's more like wake up, Neo.
That's right.
It's
The
a
Matrix.
lot more matrixy these days.
That's right.
They got
Yep. Not.
agents. Those agents are everywhere, and it could be anybody, right? So the
Mm,
the theory of the Matrix was, you know, they could turn anybody into an agent, right?
mm.
Well, you could be around some well-meaning people, and all of a sudden, somebody's microphone sends it to some algorithm, and they're like, "That's what terrorists say. Send the robots." You know, that's Minority Report squared.
Mm-hmm.
So order of magnitude different than the Constitution. And that's what they designed it to be. They couldn't defeat the Constitution. Look, America's been here, what, 250 years? It has taken a long time to beat us down like Rocky in round 10, 11, right? But there is a point where America can get back up the mat, and it's unique in against any other country in history because we do have like the fabric of this country was made saying no to tyrannical authority.
That's right.
No other country has that advantage. So,
Mm-hmm.
if in all this great universe, this is the only country ever to be like, I think it's a good idea to arm all the citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, these various things that are unique to American culture. I don't know. If America can't do it, who could?
That's right.
Maybe people in the future who listen to Grand Theft World. I don't know. If things don't work out, there's always plan B.
Yeah, well, I think Gandhi said history leans toward truth, and I'm studying him a little bit as well. But I agree with you. The founding document with the Declaration of Independence, saying that the just powers of government derive from the consent of the governed. I was like, I couldn't believe that was in there. So you contrast that with the Constitution and what Lysander Spooner proved to have no authority because it's a contract you never agreed to, and you can't delegate rights that you don't have. So I refer a lot of my patriot friends back to the Declaration of Independence because that's, like you said, 250 years this year. And I ask them, I say, have you ever read the Declaration of Independence? Go read it, dude. Like, it's laying everything out. But as Larkin Rose put out, it's statism is a religion in my view as well. And so there's no logic. You didn't decide pledge allegiance to the state, with a conscious mind that was drilled into us, mandatory attendance, as you know. So it's it is good
I think the
document.
juxta I think the juxtaposition that you're describing is simply that there's a utopian ideal of what liberty and freedom are like, but it wasn't developed until after thousands of years of non-liberty and non-freedom. And then it was like attempted to be implemented in a place that by the time it evolved philosophically, some people have nuclear weapons. So
Mm.
you might need, so like ideally in philosophy, you might not need, as an educated, self-reliant person, all that type of government authority telling you what to do, right? On the other hand, if government has a sole purpose to protect the rights of the individuals that support it and give it its justification, that I think is the only time in history that it can have an ethical and moral purpose. But it has never been held or limited to that state of capacity, and it has always expanded beyond it because people think government owns things. Well, it's government property. That means you paid for it. Thank you. I mean, I can use it. I've chipped in. My parents chipped in. My grandparents chipped in. My great grandparents chipped in.
Mhm.
Since 1913, that's been the game, right?
Mhm.
So then they could say, well, you're not actually paying for those things. You're only paying the interest on the vigorous debt that's being jacked up, right?
Mm.
The things that pay for things are stolen money from people in the future that aren't even born yet that are going to be shouldered with the debt. So that's like, they play a bunch of games.
Oh yeah, these dudes have all the time they have meetings of the minds often, and they're just sitting there chilling. They're like, "How are we gonna do this in 5 or 10 years?" Like they just play this game out. You know who I came across that really inspired me also was Leo Tolstoy. He has a book called "The Kingdom of God is Within You" because I found out he was a anarchist Christian. And so with the
Yes.
war stuff, I'm posting some of his quotes because he basically was like, you cannot respond to evil with force. He was a true kind of like forgive your enemies, love your enemies. And I'm like, that's respectable, dude. I don't know how you can, do that, but he was telling Christians Jesus came and proved that you don't need the state, and that's why he was crucified. I was like, dang. So this is in 1894, this book. He's pointing it out. And then he pointed out how these churches are just collecting money based on these false teachings of Jesus, too. So either you believe in peace or violence, brothers and sisters out there. That's what we're starting to see. You can put any label on it, any religion, in my opinion, but you got to choose. Are you on peace or are you on violence? Are you for freedom? Or are you for slavery? And truth is very simple. It's the lies that get complicated. So, like you said, government property, like, how do you understand this? Because it's a lie. They're a gang. Now, as you said, sometimes they can do some good. Um, I start to make a decision. I don't really endorse people anymore. I endorse actions. So, like when Trump freed Ross Ulbricht, I was like, "Yay, free Ross, awesome!" But then when Trump's bombing people, I'm like, "Nah, don't kill innocent people." So I think that's one of the discoveries I made recently. Was like,
So you're saying
okay,
you're not wishy-washy?
right. Well, just blind endorsements because the statism is, well, are you against Trump or are you for Trump? I'm like, dude, we're transcending the cult of personality. We're looking at his actions. And what Dale Brown taught me from Threat Management Center out of Detroit, Michigan, he said, when somebody is being violent, they're a problem. But when they're being peaceful, they're not a problem. It's like, that is so simple. Some guy, punched him like 10 years ago. And then later on, he confronted him, and the guy was afraid. He's like, no, he said, I forgive you, man. You punched me 10 years ago. You're violent 10 years ago, but now you're peaceful. So now you're my friend. So this kind of spiritual stuff becomes interesting to me as well. That I'm a spiritual being. I just have a body. I call it a body temple nation that I'm independent as I am, as of all your listeners as well. And they've been using this psychological warfare to alienate us from the source, from the creator, from the great mystery, as Campbell would put it. But um, yeah, man, it's amazing stuff that this is what time it is. And I don't know what your thoughts are on the Epstein stuff, or how people are gonna get justice. I mean, I don't have any hope on getting justice. Do you?
Well, I think justice starts by not letting it continue going forward. Now you know there are predators of that ilk in the environment out there if you didn't know already. And then you act as if, and you go on with your goals and conducting your life. You mentioned Tolstoy, The Kingdom of God is Within You. Very interesting book. My buddy Dylan had read through all of Tolstoy's works and Dostoevsky, and he's an avid reader. But I
Nice.
have a Tolstoy quote in front of me,
Hmm.
and it's about art. Art conveys a feeling that the artist once experienced. And the art conveys that experience to the observer. So really, art is about the transfer of a feeling, and that's a very substantial part of our existence. And those feelings are more powerful than the thoughts and facts that we try to express many times, which goes back to storytelling
Hmm.
because that's a form of art. The report, the briefing is a statement of facts. Taking those facts and making it into something people can load for understanding, for deriving wisdom, right? Now let's go back to Aesop's fables real quick. You know, the mouse asks to be spared from the lion. I mentioned this last week, but that type of story is applicable to people for thousands of years. If you read, Greek classics, the human situations they were dealing with back then are pretty identical to the human situations people have to deal with now. And there was a classical writing that put like every form of storytelling. There's like 100 and what there was a number. This is every story that can be told in every format. And
Hmm.
so like anything that you see today, Pretty Woman goes back to the island of Lesbos and Sappho and these other things that like stories that were told back then in a very similar way, right? So it's not that the song remains the same, but the stories kind of do. Your observations of comedy earlier, how do you work on bringing elucidating, edifying topics to an audience vis-a-vis comedy? Because most comedy is pretty hollow and shallow and not very deep.
Yeah, I took a couple courses. Jerry Corley is a guy on YouTube, and he has the eight laugh triggers. He's like deduced it down to eight laugh triggers. It's kind of heady, but there's like incongruency,
Sure.
ambivalence, and there's a whole list of them. So it's like, okay, what makes people laugh? And surprise is one of them as well. Superiority and a few other things, but recognition. So having these kind of tools of aiming or I say foundation, and then you can build on top of that. What I do now is have an Evernote app in my phone, and if I'm hanging out with my friends or talking with somebody, and we're live like this, we're just friends, we're talking, and I'll say something or they say something, I write that down, and then that can become the punchline. So the basic of as a joke is there's a setup and a punchline. And if you have a story, then you can have multiple punchlines, you can have a build up, and then at the end you can have a reversal. And that's so what I'm trying to use is we as we said, self-ownership, government's illegitimate, I want to put this in there. Or the left right paradigm. I'll do something about the left right paradigm because where I'm at, thankfully, there's more conservatives now than the lefties, like I was in Santa Cruz, which is one of my conclusions as well. You want to be around in a county where there's more conservative people than otherwise, just because they don't believe in the forced jab and the transgender stuff in general. So some skew of truth or commitment to truth. So, and that's what I'm doing. So, putting these kind of ideas into the comedy, and when I produce, I can make a few bucks. So now I'm going out performing, and they're paying me to tell them some jokes. So I'm like, okay, this might have some sustainability versus, doing stuff that can't get you paid. And there's a lot of work involved. I'm still in the beginning phases, but I feel if I stay committed, this might turn into something better in the future. But it also helps me with my writing as well.
I have also on your filmmaking challenges that I heard you express. I have four words for you, and I'll put them. I wrote them out. Let me go here. In situ resource utilization. I know you don't know what that means yet. It's a type of bricolage. I think I have a video in the next block that'll explain it to the audience. But in your case, It's using what's around you to make what you need to do the thing you're trying to do, but you didn't have the thing. So it might be taping a camera to a lighting stand, and now that's your tripod, right? So you don't let the thing that's missing stop you from doing a thing. There's
Mm,
usually something in your environment. If you look around, it's like hidden aspects of the game.
mm.
Like it's raining, you don't have an umbrella, but there's a tarp over there. Like we can make a shelter, that type of thing, right? And yeah, that's it's a thing that can be used in certain situations. Like I didn't have a teleprompter back in the day when I tried to deliver content on screen. This is circa 2010. So I built one out of wood and pipe fittings, and what I had to make a platform for the camera, and it was on a little piece of pipe, and it went to a piece of wood, and then I made a wood frame, and I put some cloth over it, and I put like one of the halfway, silvered mirrors that I got from eBay for $7, and I put it at an angle, and I laid a monitor down here, and I was able to roll script because in the marketplace it was like thousands of dollars to get a real teleprompter. So if you're in the freedom movement and you're trying to emulate, what people are seeing on TV to break through and be like, dude, there's other stuff going on. Back then, it was helpful to emulate the formats that they were seeing. And for individuals, the lights, the camera, the microphones, all that stuff, the editing software was meant to break everybody.
Mm.
And then that all changed because of social media and live streaming and people playing games online. And all of a sudden, you've got stream decks and cameras and prompters that just work and all the things that you need to actually deliver content to people in a consistent way. What are some of the things that you've had to do in your experiences to like bricolage your way forward to make the thing because you didn't have the thing, but you're not going to miss the thing because you didn't have it?
Working with this director, he's kind of like a savant. He writes the story, edits, directs, does the music, he does the fight scenes, So it's like artists are very unique individuals and they have a lot of idiosyncrasies or, unique abilities. So it's kind of learning how to work with a highly intelligent and, rare individual. That was one challenge. And, um, the other is just organizing the actors, bringing the actors together. Uh, he calls something the three P's: the people, the props, and the places. So I had to do some, site location, and then later on, because we were filming out of order, so he wanted to say, "Hey, is this actor in the right costume?" And so I was like, "Oh, now I got to have costume continuity." Oh Lord! So I'm trying to like learn this retrospect, and so now it's the three P's and the two C's, some type of framework to kind of build upon. And I think it's just about building a body of work, and finding hopefully get a ROI on the film and then try to keep doing it again and maybe get some investors. I think just in our conversation, I think people will benefit, understand the power of story, that it's not cartoons and kindergarten stuff, dude. This is legit. This is a Braveheart, and even the Bible itself isn't a report. It's a bunch of stories. So you have the character, and this thing goes that way, goes up and down. So this is why Mel Gibson with the Passion of the Christ. I think he's working on a sequel for the Passion of Christ. It like broke all these
Well,
records.
everybody's working on the sequel. It's called Bring Back the Third Temple and Jesus Comes Back, right? Isn't that Armageddon story like what BB and Trump are working on right now?
I think.
They'll,
I
it's like
think I think they use
Mel's
the
racing.
Bible. Yeah, the
Can you
Bible is
tell the
the
story before the red heifers?
That's right. That's right. And they use it as a playbook rather than, oh, this book is prophetic. It's like, okay, we got to follow the playbook. That's my conclusion because they saw, what was it in the 40s, maybe earlier, they saw how the Muslims and the Christians were this huge psychological blocks on the planet and they're a little small group. And so they're, how can we get them to fight against each other? And what's it, the Albert Pike
World
have the group?
Council of Churches was the Dulles brothers enactment, so they took over. So like right now, you've got a lot of pastors in America, thousands of pastors going over to Israel for training,
Mm,
and from the top, it was coordinated by intelligence agency people from the supranational government, top down. That's why they all acted like that during COVID. There's a lot of top down stuff. And a couple of those guys didn't get the calls, and they were the ones getting the videos of them getting dragged out of their congregations and arrested and
mm,
beaten up and stuff to
mm.
make examples of them to scare
That's right.
the
That's right.
rest of the herd.
Yeah. Well, I had some interesting takeaway from Gandhi's book. It's called Gandhi Wields the Power of the Weapon of Moral Power. And he said, if you're not afraid to be jailed, you're not afraid to go to jail, and you're not afraid of poverty, you can't be stopped. And so when he was, because they did mass civil disobedience in India, and I mean, there's thousands of villages, this dude, right? I mean, India is a gigantic country. So I'm reading some firsthand accounts of what happened. And when they would go to a new village, he would say, okay, who's in charge here? Okay, when he gets arrested, who's in charge here? And when he gets in, so they had a succession of leadership already in line, like 6 to 8 of them already. They knew they were going to get arrested, and then they had a different belief about being in jail. They were proud to go to jail. They said, "Oh, you were only in there for a few weeks. I was in there for 9 months. I was in there for 2 years." So they shifted on what the values were, which is I'm not going to obey you. You can take my body, but you're not going to get my obedience. And it was called a satyagraha. And it was like a spiritual belief. And it was these dudes took a commitment to nonviolence and the truth, and embodying or living the truth. So I never saw that. That really wasn't in the documentary or the 1982 story about Gandhi. I get another movie, right?
The Ben
Um,
Kingsley joint. That's
that's
how they
right.
always do it, man. It's made by the British, by the way. Did you notice that?
Nope.
The people who killed Steve Biko, the people who persecuted Gandhi, they make films about the guys they persecuted. They're happy to tell you after they've killed them off, basically. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, oh, look at this guy. He really fought for, black rights in South Africa,
Yeah.
but he dies in the back of a Land Rover, like horrifically,
Mm,
between two torture centers.
mm.
But David Attenborough will make a movie about it, and they'll put Kevin Kline and Denzel Washington in there to play Steve Biko. Cry Freedom, for those of you
Wow.
who are wondering what that
That's
might be.
right. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm surprised you heard of Biko. You're the only other guy I ever heard of who heard of Biko because I looked that up and um yeah, saw Denzel do that. But dude, you're such a great researcher, man. You find out the origins of these guys. Um in the Gandhi one, 1982, they did kind of give some kind of tips and he was given his philosophy because these dudes are getting beat. God bless these Indians. They're getting beat by the British. And Gandhi said, when you get beat by them and you don't fight back, they begin to see themselves as the aggressor and as kind of a shameful human being. And then they start to respect you more. So I was like, dude, how do you get beat up in mass and not fight back? Because it's a spiritual thing that these guys are doing. And it was, I just never, because you don't hear about this stuff. They don't teach civil disobedience anywhere, but because it is actual superpower, in my conclusion.
Well, they don't
Um,
want to teach you that Gandhi had to wait for Western press to get there and then tell these people, like, you have to let the horses trample you. You have to let their brutality be evident in order for the world to see what's going on.
yeah,
And that's a tough sell to
yep,
anybody.
that's
But
right.
you
Well,
know, I like Gandhi's message, but as a man, very kind of flawed. He's like there's some things going on with Gandhi that weren't very Gandhi-like. And if you let that spoil all the good messaging that is true and accurate, then you can throw all those things away, right? Like he might have denied his wife certain antibiotics because of the belief system, but when it came time, he took those things himself. He might have slept with people who were in inappropriate type of relationships with him, those sort of things.
yeah,
So I don't know. I'm sure
I'll
Mother
make a
Teresa
comment
was
on
up to
that
the same
too.
sort of shit.
I agree. Yeah. So what I do is I take what I like from an individual and I leave what I don't because no, I'm flawed
That's
too.
like action versus the person, what you were saying before. I think it's a mark of intelligence because, if you say everything Richard Grove, like there's something I'm doing right here that you don't like. So, like, we could find anything to disagree or agree on. So, it's like if I write this statement and it reflects reality, you like that, that's cool. If I write this one, you don't think it does, you don't have to like that. We're cool on that too. But
That's
when
right.
people are like, they either have to take ones or zeros, it's like there's something in between. It's called Zeno's paradox.
That's right. Yeah. The humans are very complex, and by their actions, you can evaluate them in the moment. But who knows what they're going through in the past? And the just being a human in general is quite a challenge. That's what I've been able to recognize. But I saw a comment in there. Somebody called Gandhi a pedophile. I haven't found any evidence. Here's what I found. He was at the end of his life, after his wife passed away, he was sleeping with his niece as a spiritual challenge to make sure he can be celibate. And even then, amongst his some of his followers. So that was a pretty stupid idea. He wasn't thinking long term. I think he was just thinking short term. And hey, you know, anyways, it was stupid. I agree. But as you said, I like some of the stuff that he did do, and to take it now, because now God bless Gandhi and MLK and Spooner and these guys. But now it's us. Now we're here, audience members, and we can go out and create. We can plant gardens. We can plant seeds that can provide for people that will never meet. And I think that's the intergenerational component that I get excited about is like what Gatto
How
did for
can you make
me.
the world a better place while you're here?
100%. And for some people who believe in reincarnation, I'm like, man, maybe I do come back. I had an amazing experience, on some psychedelics, and I'm like, well, maybe, yeah, maybe this is a kind of a cycle of some kind, like a free will cycle. I don't know, but I did meet a guy. He was part of the secret society Scroll and Key. I think it's like a sister of Skull and Bones, and
Mhm.
he was a spiritual dude, and we were having lunch, and I was still a pretty devout Christian at that point, but I was opening up, and he's like, for sure, it's reincarnation, for sure. And I never got to ask him later because we were just, becoming acquainted. I'm gonna ask him now. Anyways, but yeah,
It's not an insignificant secret society. So allow me to elucidate for the audience, just elucidate for the audience real quick. Scroll and Key is a Yale secret society, includes Cord Meyer Jr., who was around with the JFK assassination team, and his wife was brutally murdered because of her affair with JFK involving LSD. Cornelius Vanderbilt, Donald McLennan from Marsh and McLennan, Dr. Benjamin Spock, Fareed Zakaria, Gary Trudeau, he's a prime minister over in Canada land. John Whitney, that's Skull and Bones Whitney family. Paul Mellon from the Mellon banking family. William C. Bullitt Jr., he was a big hitter back in the early 1920s, right around Versailles Treaty time. So it is a Yale Society of the secret variety, right next to like Wolf's Head and Skull and Bones and other secret societies. And some of them do, like Harry Potter houses, have various beliefs that are outside of the status quo. Let's put it that
Mhm.
way.
Yeah. And even like one of the questions I had in Christianity um was like, what about the people in the Amazon jungle who never heard of Jesus Christ, right? Because I was taught about eternal hellfire damnation, and I'm like, and even that bit that George Carlin does about, oh, how God's gonna send you to hell and he loves you. It's a crazy bit. Anyways, that really affected me. But so I said, okay, maybe that idea was made up. Eternal hellfire, like the rulers, like you got to get these people afraid of the boogeyman, not like growing food, survival here. It's something out there, and you can't see it. And but we'll tell you about it, and you got to follow the rules, kind of like Santa Claus, right? So I'm beginning to understand the imagination is so important. So it's up to each one of us to take control of our imagination and choose what you're going to believe in, choose what you're going to imagine for yourself, and don't let the boogeyman frighten you when there's nothing even there. I can't remember the name of the movie, but I was a kid, probably 8 or 9 years old, and there was a story about monsters under the bed. So for probably weeks, I would get off my bed and run out of my room because I thought there was monsters under my bed. And then one day I just decided I don't care. I want to know what's down there. And so I went down there and I closed my eyes, and I thought I was gonna fall under the bed. It's a story, it's made up, but to a young boy, it was real. And so we have many adults out there that are taking these stories of like Iran or the COVID or these things, and they're catastrophizing it into the future. And they're making it real because the media and the experts are saying it's real. And now it's like, dude, I think, this truth has been very helpful to take control of our imagination and not bow down to these people and actually start speaking it into existence. You probably know the word abracadabra. That's what that word means. I speak and it happens. And so that's the thing about the Bible I do like. God said, let there be light, and there was light. And it's like, oh, I wonder if that's what Jesus was talking about. I'm here on my Father's business. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. You'll do greater things than I. And I was like, man, like those things I really love about Jesus. It's the organize, it's the control, it's the give us your money, it's the support the state of Israel and having these kind of political things in the church or in the body, and it just seems to be immoral, amoral, and not something that really captures my heart like it did some years ago when I was really devout in the church.
I think the choice for people these days is that your imagination is so amazingly strong, but most people spend most of their life imagining fears of things undesirable results of things that have not happened yet, instead of mapping their dreams to reality. And so I know that sounds like challenging. So here's the challenge. Every time you have one of those negative thoughts, just balance it out with a positive thought. Be unwilling to stack on one side of the scale without being fair, right? You want to mention Trump did this or that. I want to mention this over here. I just want the scale to balance. If I don't have anything to put over here, no problem. Keep putting over there. But all too often, facts are left off, and then we don't get like that's the whole scale of justice symbolism for making decisions. The adjudication of general to specific and specific back to general through inductive and deductive logic is being hidden from people, and it sounds too complex because I think we're past the part of literacy and comprehension where people can put those things together
Mhm.
to actually take informed action, and so they have no choice but to be on remote control through assumption, and whatever I heard today is the thing I got to do. And that's very deleterious and dangerous to anyone who understands freedom, because we don't want to tolerate such things. You know, people have a
Yep.
right to be ignorant, but not to the point where it infringes on my freedom.
Yep. That's right. Yeah, the amorality.
Likewise,
Mhm.
I have the right to be ignorant, but if it infringes on your freedom, that's the line right there.
That's right. Yeah, basic self-ownership seems to be the key for me because I saw Auburn Herbert talking about voluntarism in the 1906, 1903, and it's all about self-ownership. And it's like, okay, so to emphasize this and then to make some jokes about it and maybe make some films, or I haven't gotten to music yet, but um, I know Scott
Scott's got
has.
you
I
covered on
appreciate
music.
Scott calling
Yeah.
out that stuff. I was, Grant Presence is crushing it in that area. But
Yeah,
to,
dude. I could see you guys on tour. Like, in between musical acts, I could see speakers at those types of events, and
yep. Well,
you should
funny
hook up with
enough,
them.
I did. I opened up for him in Capitola, California, and then Santa Cruz last year. I did like 10 or 15 minutes, and it's a small little crowd, but it's basically just getting out there. And yeah, what a joy and honor to share the stage with him. He's probably the top artist on the planet in my view, or at least one of them, um, using music and stories. But
He's just an amazing phenomenon. Like, we had him speak yesterday at the VIP conference, and usually when I have him come, it's to play music for autonomy students and graduates. So to tell the musician, like, leave your music stuff at home. I want to talk about process and inspiration and creativity and obstacles and things that make you want to quit and all these other things, because there's people in the audience trying to do likewise. Time passes really fast. If we don't train the next generations to bring up some excellence, like, we're going to reap what we sow. And if we didn't sow anything, we won't reap, right? So, trying to get freedom communicated so that more people can get it out through louder megaphones, microphones, networks, I think is always essential.
yeah,
And the end result benefits everybody. It's a rising
I
tide that raises all ships.
I agree. Well, I appreciate your Tolstoy quote too, which was art is a transfer of emotion. We are
I
logical
got it
being.
from Van Neistat. I have to give credit where credit is due. Although I wrote it down as his quote, and I found out later it was a Tolstoy quote, but then I rewatched the clip and he says it in there and I missed it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is. We're logical beings, but we're also emotional, and the shortness of life really puts stuff into perspective. Um, I
that's a
shared it a
Seneca
little.
book so Seneca was one of the Stoic poets back in the day.
Yeah.
So he has a short book called On the Shortness of Life, and I recommend that to a lot of people as well because it helps you take more timely action and be less procrastinative in your actions.
Mm. Well, this affected me last year because literally 2 weeks after I did those two sets with Grant, I got in a car accident, totaled my car, and broke my sternum and some ribs, and got banged up a little bit. And I couldn't laugh, cough, or sneeze for a month because the sternum holds all the guts in, right? I don't know if anybody had any. So I was at very close with God at that point, and I was realizing, okay, God, you give me the ability to laugh, to sneeze, to cough. I thank you. You know, I didn't treat this body in a good way, and so now that's what happens. So for a month, bro, I was like, could like just unbelievable for a few weeks, couldn't even like barely lay down in bed. So I think God works through taking stuff away, or nature just works this way to understand the value of today, the value of now, the value of your life and my life now. So when I see people, because now it became real for me, and then when I see people, I appreciate them and express my gratitude to them because there is no tomorrow. And, you know, I've had some other near death experiences, and probably you guys have as well. And you're just like, whew, you know, like, something just like you almost lost it all. Well, now what are you going to do with that? So I just start to feel more energy and more drive towards what I'm doing here for God and for the people, you know, that I can serve and plant some seeds that will, you know, perpetuate, you know, forever. Like you said, the next generation, you know, and this was, I think, was it, was it Gatto? Maybe in your interview or one of someone else's, but he was talking about, was it the probiotic function, which is the perpetuation of the agenda to the next crowd, that only a small group knows what's going on, but they do. They know it's a, you know, a plan for
So
global
that best
enslavement.
society can repopulate the earth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the opposite of that for me was intergenerational freedom. And I define that as the transfer of the knowledge of the truth of self ownership to the young people around me. Because if somebody would have told me this when I was 8 or 10 or 11, I would have been like, I got it. I understand it. But nobody could tell me because nobody had that knowledge around me. So now I'm grateful that you have a child, and I don't know anybody else here that might, but I'm still praying to God, you know, I can have some children so I can pass it on. But even if I don't, through nephews, niece, whoever I can, to get this knowledge, and I speak life into these people because we are the children. You know, when I see a 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, I'm like, dude, I remember exactly what you're feeling right now because I was just there the other day. You know, I'm in my 40s now. I was there the other day, and it goes that fast. So just the appreciation of life really hit me big this last year, and even now. So now it's like, okay, how to move forward. And I didn't see the summit you did yesterday, but I want to see the replay, man. It looked like it was a very valuable offering and information for the public to help getting out there.
Even I was surprised at some of the crash and burns that my buddies were able to share.
Nice.
And yeah, so I think it's important because it also lets us know like sometimes people are going through stuff and they're not saying anything about it, so we got to check in more often and not assume, right?
That's right.
But your point about freedom being a multi-generational inheritance type of thing we have to hand down. When I made my personal logo type seal here, it's
Hmm.
freedom is learned, not inherited. It doesn't
Yep.
happen automatically. Like we have the opportunity to pass it on, but we actually have to take actions and teach the next generation so that they know the difference. And if they know the difference, it is so much harder to fool them with the not true type of stuff, all the propaganda that comes in, right? That's the intellectual self-defense. I've always thought it criminal that we send our young children out into the world as a system, right? 5 or 6 year olds going to kindergarten, then they're off, 12 years of school. We do that before we even teach them the concept of intellectual self-defense, that somebody might give you something that's not accurate that could hurt you. And we're just like, no, trust authority. The adult said it, you better listen. Right. Like there's all those things that, I wasn't really perceiving all that until I read Gatto's work either. But it was there and it's still there and it's still something that's not healthy in our society. And I think that the more we can encourage and strengthen individuals to be able to bring up their own children and educate their own children and not have like drop them off at state sponsored daycare for 12 years, you're going to get the results in either case. If you want to get indoctrination and lose the relationship directly with your kids, go put them in that system. If you want to build a real experiential relationship with your kids, then you're going to have to do something different. And, thankfully, there are resources out there to help people do such things these days, right?
That's right.
So,
Yeah, critical, man. You got to get your kids out the school system, man. That was the acronym. You know, I got permission with John, which is get all the thinkers out of forced schooling and just kind of putting that in the zeitgeist. Because eventually I'll figure out this marketing stuff. Maybe I'll follow some of your stuff a little bit better, because marketing is half the ball game. It might be 80% of the ball game. You can have a great product with poor marketing and not make any money, or you can have a poor product or mediocre product with great marketing and make a ton. And so that's what I'm noticing now too. It's like, okay, it's not the ideas, it's not the truth, it's not even almost the art to a degree. Natural good art will spread through fan base, but marketing and understanding that beast is crucial. And that's what I'm starting to really recognize and put some more time into, because it doesn't happen by accident. These bestsellers, these best-selling audios or movies, there's people hustling and advertising and promoting and getting out there, and that's another art form. So that's what I'm starting to learn more of too.
Well, some of the challenges that you have on your table for this year, that you don't know, like for certain how you're going to handle. Do you have anything like that sense on your radar? Like, I want to do this project, but I don't know how to do this part yet, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, this film was a big one because I won't give you the private details, but it's a 30-minute film, great story, a touch into the zeitgeist with the digital ID. We did get to put exit and build in the script. So we got a good actor, Danny Hassel. He's in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. So basically trying to monetize that film and get enough capital to do another one. That's the challenge that I'm working on, so I don't have to, borrow more money or, take on any investors.
Well, showing people the process of the creation along the way and telling that story could get them involved enough to be like, oh, I want to see the thing go on. So traditionally, that's a method of being able to communicate the need and exchange the value. You could put like that type of stuff on a Patreon
Hmm.
or behind a paywall, and then you'd have a small group of people that are associated on the project, and I would give them like associate producer credit in the film and or other accoutrements that would be knowledge transfer, resources, references, worksheets, any of this other type of stuff that you can package up with it. And then you've got a model that you could use for various projects once you know how to crank that up.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, the crowdfunding was an interesting lesson, and I guess Patreon would be a little bit different. But I think, people are starting to know what time it is. I start to feel. So if they have a good description and vision of the project, then they'll want to get involved. Um, but yeah, the movie project was very interesting. So hopefully we can, do that again and then learn how to make it sustainable. Learn from some other ones. I got some other books from some producers, and it's a very high level profession, but if you do it with the right people, I think, you could. And I think that's what I'd like to show, like a homeschooling uh story, or even independent food, water, and energy story. Like, I don't know if you saw the there's Stephen Greer film, The Lost Century, where he talks about all the lost free energy technologies over the last 100 years. But it was a great it was mostly documentary, but it laid out,
Here's how
you
I
know,
listen to Stephen Greer, just so you can get my take. I have my belief turned off when I listen to him. So I believe nothing he says until I hear something that is like, okay, I'll believe that thing. That's true. But otherwise, I'm super incredulous. And that does lead to me learning a lot of things because if you're not, if you believe the thing, there's no learning to do. So if you're like, I don't know if that's true, that's education right there. So please continue. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, he just brought up Tesla and Stanley Meyer with the water
Hmm.
engine and a bunch of other guys. And I was like, man, and then he listed how they get rid of you if you have a free energy technology, and he listed the different techniques. And so if anybody has free energy out there, give it away, make it a big thing, don't try to monetize it. He gave all the different examples, but the point was is that would be a great story to show an independent neighborhood of people with free energy being able to live in abundance, and all the cool things you can do, knowing that there's no electricity bill, there's no gas bill, there's just an abundance of energy. So I'd like to make a story about that and put that into story form so people can see, because that's possible. And that's what he was putting in that. that film was that they've had
Usually the break is shorter in the Zoom. He's coming back.
and
Oh,
I haven't
there it is.
seen any stories about that, and I'd love to see that.
All right, so we had a little Zoom glitch there at the end, but I think people were picking up on what you're laying down. And for most people, they know what time it is because the hours changed 12 hours ago at this point. If they don't know what time it is, they're late for life. They're late for life. David, in addition to this Twitter page, is there any place you want people to check out?
Just the link tree. The link tree has most of my stuff, and then just be keep your head out and your ears open for the outlaw farmer that's coming. Um, yeah, I do early high school graduation for teenagers. So if you want to get a diploma, let me know. You get a private high school diploma out of California, or you want some help homeschooling, I can assist you in that. And then this film is Outlaw Farmer, and I'm hoping it will go viral. And if you want to stay in touch about that, just email me at outlawfarmer@proton.me, outlawfarmer@proton.me, and you have some other ways to contact me there. I do have my voluntary living YouTube channel, and I'm working on a merch store. I saw you got your hat, so I think I should pull out my hat too here. I try to wear more merch this year. Voluntary living. I got my sweatshirt right here. Okay. I'm tired of wearing clothes from these bad people, man. You know, we got to wear the real merchandise from people that stand for something like Richard Grove and Scott Armstrong and these people, and myself with this one, voluntary living. So this merch store hopefully will be up in a few weeks.
I agree with you. I mean, I made a rule many years ago. So I think I created my own designs in like 2012 or 2013, and I basically stopped. I just created what I wanted to see. I have a First Amendment, any design I wanted, I just made them, and then I've had clothes since then. I don't have to wear corporate branded stuff unless I want to, and then the other decision I made is any of my friends and colleagues that have some sort of merch like that, if it's Ryan Christian or Corbett and Pilato or whoever. I've tried to acquire stuff over the years. Luke Rudowski, anyone that's got stuff, because I figure if we're not helping each other out in that way, that's not useful to freedom. And if I can't be in a place where I can afford to support my colleagues, how could I ever expect their support in the future? You know what I'm saying? It's like, so I try to pay it forward in case I ever need it in the future. Just in
Absolutely.
case, treat others as you would have yourself be treated, unless you're a sadomasochist, and don't do that.
That's
Don't do
right.
that.
Well,
All right.
one last thing here, and I can get a
Yeah.
jam here. Voting is with my dollars, not by writing my name on a piece of paper. I vote with my dollars. I vote with my attention. I vote with my actions. This, I believe, concept will catch on too. Writing somebody's name, checking a box on someone's name is not how we change the world. It's making media, it's building food, it's building energy, it's building relationships, and this type of stuff that we're doing right now. So, yes, so I vote with my dollars. I think I have your T-shirt too, man. The freedom is learned. I can't remember if I got it at Pork Fest or something, but I love that, dude. That's a great logo. Freedom is learned, not inherited. And yeah, let's keep supporting each other. I
Got the
appreciate being on the
tools of
show.
learning and the Eagle's claws, and I stole it from the Ramones, which is more punk than punk. Dave, I want to take it one step further from what you were laying it off there before. Just remind me what you said there at the end.
Voting with my dollars.
Voting with your dollars. The real currency is our attention.
Hmm.
So learn by voting with your dollars, and then also and learn to redirect your attention to things that are in between you and your goals, and just work on those things, and you're going to be living a lifestyle of liberty and freedom while all this other stuff, I mean, it's going to continue to go on. I think we need to be able to lower the volume on it, and we can't do that unless we raise ourselves to the situation. Otherwise, it's always going to be beyond our grasp to be able to do anything with it. So I want to thank you for helping people grow in the right direction. I've got your link tree up here, and I also have the Valor Academy over here if people want to check it out, thevaloracademy.com. David James Rodriguez, thank you for another great conversation and all the food for thought you've helped the audience have tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brother Richard, Brother Scott. Peace, love, freedom forever, gentlemen. And until the next time, man, let's do it again.
Harumph.
David, you crushed, dude. Good job, man.
Thanks, guys. Peace and love to your audience too, man. If you're listening to Richard Grove and Scott Armstrong, dude, you guys are the ones, man. Seriously, you guys are chosen ones. You guys are the visionaries. Don't feel alone. I know how it is in my family too. It's us, guys. We're the ones. We're connecting on a digital relationship platform right now, but we're going to meet in person soon, whenever the next event is or whenever these things happen. It's going to continue. So I look forward to seeing you guys in real life at some point very soon. See you guys.
Right on. I've dealt with a variety of fears over the years by facilitating a growth mindset and an anti-fragile mentality. I've learned from mistakes that you haven't even conceived of yet. Now, I can't do it for you, but I can share the resources, the methods, the tools, and inspiration for you to learn how to do it for yourself. And it really is worth learning how to do for yourself because it's a lifelong beneficial skill. It's evergreen. It's never going to tarnish. You're always going to use this. If you're interested in learning more, I host a podcast every Sunday night. We analyze the week's news and help you have non-contradictory views you actually understand, but you've got to come along for the ride and process the news with us so you have that understanding. I also teach adults twice a year in a 12-week course called Autonomy that is aimed at resolving all the problems I just pointed out with the school system and the irrational fears and the replacement of the rites of passage and the methods you need to have a skeleton key in life and a Swiss Army knife so you can have the tools and the access to do whatever you need to do in this world to bring your goals, to bring your dreams and map them to a truthful reality. It is a simple process, but it is not for those who cling to their irrational fears. So I hope if we have lowered the barrier to entry today, if you see a future you that is more realistic and in detail and something you want to strive toward, I recommend you go to getautonomy.info. Check out the offer as far as what we do for people. I want you to know it applies to you. You can learn it. I can teach it. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention. Peace. Who's going to be first off the mute this morning?
I'm glad that I have this course now more than ever. Having a community of people to discuss how to be empowered and autonomous is really necessary and also therapeutic. I'm this much scared about the virus and a lot scared of what's coming down the pipe as a result.
All right, so first off, we're going to get you away from that fear and that stress that I'm sensing. And I want to get you into the practicality of exercising the conversations you're going to need to have.
Have you found that your skills aren't matching up with the challenges ahead? Here are 19 essential skills for success that school never taught you. Get your free copy by following the link below or visit getautonomy.info/19skills.